and I was able to roll that over into
Okay.
self-directed IRA, and then be the bank, be a lender for these deals that for us as real estate investors, we could underwrite ourselves.
Everyone, welcome to another episode of the Rocket Your Dollar podcast. And I'm very excited to have with me today Harley Green. So, Harley, his company is Investaway, him and his wife, and they have a very interesting platform and also very uniquely tied to self-directed IRAs. I mean, I won't do it justice by explaining it. I'll kind of let Harley get into it, but we'd love for Harley to share his story and how he uses self-directed IRAs, both personally and then obviously as a part of the Investaway business, because I think it's an asset class that our community has been doing more and more of. We've seen it. It's probably the fastest growing asset class from last year to this year, tracking over the last 15 months. So, without further ado, Harley, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and spend time on the episode?
Of course. So, yeah, a little bit about my background. I started my career as a computer engineer working in the defense industry. Had a 15-year career there, and I'm sure like many listeners, had a traditional 401k and had good benefits.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where we started to diversify into real estate investing. We started being active real estate investors on the side, and that grew and grew to the point where in 2022, I was able to step away from my career as a computer engineer to just focus full time on managing our investments, specifically our real estate investments. At the same time, we had a network of real estate investors around us. We were in the Chattanooga, Tennessee market, and we'd see time
Okay.
and time again these good deals get killed by other hard money lenders. They would like change terms at the last minute, or they just would not reply to communications in a timely manner to get these time sensitive deals closed. And I had this 401k from my career as a computer engineer, and I learned about self-directed IRAs, and I was able to roll that over into
Okay.
self-directed IRA, and then be the bank, be a lender for these deals that for us as real estate investors, we could underwrite ourselves. And we knew they were solid deals. We were totally fine if like something were to happen to take over the deal and finish it ourselves. And it
Sure.
grew from there. And
Well, and
now
that
we
was one of
have,
the topics I loved, by the way. I saw, when I was doing my research on you that I really love the concept that you talked about, and sorry to interrupt, but you had said like, hey, you show people or you basically participate using the self-directed IRA to be a real estate investor without actually having to own and operate and manage that real or get real estate like returns, I think is specifically what I read. So that was very, very cool.
yeah,
So
that's a
sorry
great
that
point.
you.
No, yeah. So it's grown to the point now where it's allowed our family to be full-time international nomads. So we're coming to you from Lima, Peru. We've been traveling for over 2 years. Our kids have been to 20 plus countries, six continents. We just have Antarctica left. And passive lending through the self-directed IRA, and we've rolled other assets into it as well to grow the business to meet both our borrower demand. And then also we've recently opened it up last year to other investors who want an opportunity to be private lenders, but don't want the headache of like having to underwrite their own deals, source deals, manage the servicing. So we handle all of that for people who want to be lenders, have that security of, a hard asset that's protecting their
Mm.
cash, and still having high yields. And so because we're able to underwrite quickly, have great communication, and fund the deals and give the borrowers structure they need to do the fix and flips quickly, we're able to have very high yields, and we pass those yields along to our co-lenders. So people with self-directed IRAs, they can go in our portal, they can see the different loans and pick exactly what loan they want, when they want to participate, and how much they want to participate. And they get that same yield, just less a 2% management fee passed on to them. So they've been averaging about 15% annualized returns with a combination of the interest rate and then extension fees.
Now, the I guess just the real granular question, the 2%, management fee, is that just based on time or is that just based on, hey, you make $100,000 loan, there's a $2,000 fee, 2% of that?
So
Uh,
it's really just based less, it's taking away from the interest that's returned. So we don't charge on the principal. It's not like mutual funds where they
yeah.
charge you 2% regardless of whether it goes up or down. It's just 2% of the interest. So if the note is written at 16%, which is very common, the investors who co-lend with us are going to get 14%.
And then you show these people, I mean, the reality is that if you're kind of thinking about optimization versus the normal person who would just use taxable money, if they're using this in a tax deferred account, they're already doing better than 2%. Let's say it's written at 16 and you charge a 2% management fee 14. 14 in an IRA is very different than 14 taxable.
Yeah, self-directed IRAs are just the perfect vehicle for doing private lending because all the income is typically interest, tax at ordinary income rates generally. And so if you're doing it in the tax advantaged vehicle, it's perfect for that.
Okay. Well, let's back up a little bit, just so we can learn a little bit more about you. When you were starting to yourself getting into real estate using the self-directed IRA yourself, like what type of real estate did you start with? Like how did you, I mean, you said you started investing in real estate on the side. What types of real estate? How'd you get started and what's kind of your uh, area of expertise within real estate?
Yeah, so we've kind of dabbled in all of it. We got started with what it was before the term house hacking was even a thing, but we just had extra space in our basement and finished that out and got that rented. And then we started buying some turnkey condos near where we lived. Then we started buying some vacation homes further away and running those as short-term rentals. And then in 2020, we moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and became a lot more active doing fix and flips, BRRRR strategy, buying wholesale deals, renovating. And we also got involved in some commercial deals and owned RV park and partnered with other people in RV parks. And out of all those asset classes, they're all great, have their pros and cons. We really prefer the private lending. It's just we've found the most consistent cash flow, high yields, and security.
I see. Now, when you do the private lending part of it and you're finding these deals, how do people participate in that? Do they do like certain set units or, you have a deal and it needs this amount of capital so people can put I don't know, as little or as much as they want if they want to take down the whole deal? How does that work?
Yeah, great question. There's a lot of different models in the private lending space. What we've currently settled on, I feel makes sure all of our interests are fully aligned. And so what that means is when we get a deal that comes to us from one of our borrowers, we underwrite it as if we're going to keep it ourselves. So we underwrite it and we fund it using our personal capital first. So we will partner with our self-directed IRAs or bring our own capital that's liquid to it and fund it and have an active loan. Once it's been fully funded and activated, we then put it in an online portal. So we use a software tool called Baseline Software, and it gives all the details about our active service loans, the interest rate, borrower profiles, maturity dates, pictures of the house, things like that. So investors can make an informed decision about what they want to invest in. And then they go in
Okay.
through that portal and then they can make a selection of, I want to participate on this loan or this loan. And we just have a 50K minimum per loan. So you don't have to fund the whole entire thing and you don't have to fund it up front. You can see when the maturity dates are and you can make staggered investments. So you have cash flow or liquidity events whenever you need.
Okay. Now, are these accredited investors? Is that how that works, or do you not need to be because it's a lending type of deal, or how's
Right. So
that?
because the way we have it set up, it is a co-lending agreement. Basically, you're participating directly in a specific loan that you choose. You do not need to be an accredited investor. We don't have like a pooled fund where people go and are investing in a syndication or a fund and we just spread their money out however we want. They have direct control over the exact specific property that they are lending on.
I see. And this is a little bit of an aside from the real estate, but maybe just since you and your perch, I've thought about this a lot too, that this is a private investment, private lending, and obviously this sort of accredited investor thing's been around, but I've talked about it a lot on this show before that, I mean, the types of deals you're doing, they're being backed by tangible real estate, and it could be argued now that I mean, there's a lot of riskiness even in the public markets right now. So as we speak, we're kind of on the eve of a company like SpaceX, which is private today, will be public here in the next couple of weeks. But I mean, it's expected to IPO at almost $2 trillion, which might be some sort of multiple. Like I don't even know. I think it's like 20,000 times its revenue or 2,000 times its revenue. And they do 20 billion in revenue, but a $2 trillion valuation. I mean, it could be argued that someone investing in that through Robinhood or Fidelity is taking on more risk than someone investing in a loan that you have your personal capital tied to that is also being backed by a piece of real estate, and you have years and years of experience and tons of deal experience running.
Yeah, that is
So.
something that kind of boggles my mind. And, we see that a lot with across industries with licensing regulations and things that are just kind of counterintuitive when you look at the actual risk involved. And the beauty with private
Mhm.
lending is, as you said, like the money is secured. And for us, it's only first position notes. So we close at title companies. We make sure we get full lender title insurance policies. we get closing protection letters from the title company so that we are the first position. And if anything were to happen, we get paid first. And it was funny, there's a lot of syndications in the news. Like Brandon Turner had some syndications and recently went on social
Yeah.
media talking about how a deal went south. And, one comment that I made is, there were people on that deal who got paid everything they were owed. It was the bank that was in first position.
Yeah, I think I saw one of your comments about that, that had a and just so people know in the community that maybe don't follow that part of the real estate investing industry, that was a large multifamily syndication. So obviously early investors, probably got paid out if there was liquidation of the proceeds, but it looked like the syndication part itself wasn't in a primary position. That was the issue. So
Yeah.
when the deal went sideways, they actually lost their investor capital that they'd put into the deal. Now, that kind of segues a little bit into that on the platform at Investaway. Are there all sorts of types of deals in different asset classes now, and people are picking like either geographic location or asset type, or and I'm speaking from the just playing as an unfamiliar person with the platform for the sake of the community watching.
Yeah, so we focus on residential from single residential up to small multifamily. So we'll go up to like 6 units typically. So those are the types of deals that are on our portal. And then geographically speaking, most of our deals are in the Southeast. So we were previously based in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area. That's where our sphere of influence is, where most of our borrowers come from. We have a few deals outside of that where we have personal references. We've had someone come to us as a really strong track record. So we've got one deal that's like in Florida, and we have several deals that are in Alabama, and they're in strong growing markets. So there's a lot of security still with the areas that we're lending in.
I see. And then, for right now, just in case people want to take a look, the domain itself is investaway.co. Is that correct? Is that what
Correct.
I have?
Yep. If people go
Okay.
to investaway.co, there's a form there. You can click to just reach out to us to join our investor community. From there, we can have a consult call just to make sure we understand what your investing goals are. Some people are here for cash flow, some people are for long-term growth, and we can help structure investments in the loans to meet those goals.
Okay. And you also personally, both through the business and yourself individually and how you operate things, you're very knowledgeable in self-directed IRAs. And one of the questions, and this is a little bit of a segue away from InvestAway, was that, when you got started using self-directed IRAs, especially for purposes of private lending, I mean, that in and of itself, self-directed IRAs is usually a new concept to a lot of folks, especially your sort of W-2 career person who then maybe switches jobs and now has access to that old 401k to turn into an IRA, whether that's a traditional one going into stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, or a self-directed one like we have here at Rocket Dollar. Like, what were maybe some of the lessons you learned? Like, I know that one of your speaking topics, and I've seen you talk about this, is like 7 mistakes of self-directed IRA investors. You don't have to list all
Yes.
seven, but maybe just a couple just to help people understand, like, okay, if I wanted you to do private lending with my IRA, like, how does that concept work?
Yeah, so when we got started, it was kind of a quick thing. We had a borrower who was like a personal friend who had a really good track record, and a hard money lender pulled out, and we were trying to get things set up quickly. And so we had heard a few things about private lending, and we just kind of like were familiar with the concept. And we ended up doing some things that, looking back, put us at some greater risk. And this was well before we took on like investor capital. This was just our personal funds. So we were kind of learning the hard way. And that was closing out a title company and having the title company draw up the loan documents for us. So there's actually a conflict of interest there because the title company is the one who draws up the lender's title insurance. And so they're basically, when they create the loan documents and they are the ones insuring it, there's a conflict of interest there. So they are actually protecting themselves more than they are protecting you as the lender. And so we
Okay.
have since then changed and we use a third party set of attorneys who specialize in private lender law, and they draw up our loan documents. And we can tell the difference because when we first started lending, the title company's loan docs were like 3 pages long. It was like just the note and you get the deed. Now they're over 130 pages long. We have all the details about how draws happen. We've got deed in lieu foreclosure statements. We've got personal guarantees, all kinds of additional protections built in now that truly protect us as the lender.
Okay, I see. So that's one. And then, how to, I guess, other than InvestAway, I mean, you know, I I'm not certain that the people in our community who are doing private loans, in particular for real estate, how they're finding the people that they lend the money to. maybe there's local real estate groups. I've talked about this on this particular show. It is, I mean, you obviously were helping out a friend in the early days, but is that how you kind of scaled early on before you turned it into a business in Investaway? Like, is that how you found your deals,
So
the
one
ones you
thing
wanted
that
to lend
helped a
to?
lot was that, we were active real estate investors. We had a big network that way. My wife also had a real estate team that really focused on
Uh,
investors out of state. And so when she sold that team, they still continue referring borrowers or buyers on their team, borrowers for us. So we have a really strong pipeline. And then, of course, the borrowers who do work with us, they refer their friends. They love working with us. The flexibility and the terms that we give are just great for what they do. We basically designed this business to be the lender that we wish we had when we were active flippers. And so no shortage of borrowers at the moment. I would love to get to the point where we have more capital side, and I got to work to get borrowers. But at the moment, we got people in waiting. Whenever we have capital, I can go to a deep list and say, "Hey, you ready to go? We got capital ready to fund."
I see. Okay. Well, and then right now, maybe you could talk about here in, I guess now almost the middle part of 2026. Like, what's the expectation of returns? Is it based on types of deals or just like, hey, private hard money lending using IRAs is kind of this is the market range right now with the interest that people could expect to receive. Has that changed over the last few years?
Yeah, so I want two points to that question. Going back to your previous question about some of the risks and mistakes. So I actually just spoke to an investor yesterday who uses self-directed IRA, and they did their own private lending just all on their own. They had a contact that was a developer in Nashville, and they got into a bad situation because they agreed to be lenders in second position. The borrower already had a first position loan, and they ran out of
Wow.
money on that, and they needed more cash. And this guy, I mean, it could work out fine. The issue is that it's already gone a year over when it was supposed to be paid off, and he still hasn't been paid off, and they may need more money. And so when you're in second position, there's a lot more risk. And so that's something we learned early on too, is just when you're in second position, it's almost like being in zero position. It's not great security. So we focus only on first position loans. And as far as returns go, a lot of times people are offering like really high returns when they go to second position to try to get incentivize people to lend. And
Okay.
the reality is like you just may not get paid back. Like this guy was getting offered 20%. And so of course he's like, "Oh wow, I'd love to get 20%." But he's not getting 20%. It's been over a year and has nothing back. Versus our loans are 4 to 9 months. They've all paid off with at most a 3 month extension, which by the way juices our returns. And so our average return to our investors right now over the last year has been 15%, just a little bit over 15%, even though the max rate our loans are is at 16 and we take 2% for management. And the reason for that is because fix and flip loans often extend. And so when they extend, the borrower pays another percent or point, and that gets passed on to our co-lenders, and that adds to their principal that's been invested and then earns interest for those additional 3 months. And that's how they're able to juice those returns. And so, as a whole, I would say, the private money lending industry is very strong. There's a lot of people getting into it, and there's still huge demand. And so, rates of return are anywhere from like 12 to 16%, very conservatively for first position loans.
First position loans. I see. Okay. And then is using things like a self-directed IRA the best way for, let's say, like retail individual investors to participate, or is there as a market developed where people are just doing like just giant funds that are designed for just private credit, and then some manager decides how to dole out all the capital? I mean, yours are
So,
specific to
it
deals,
just
but
depends on the model of the lender. For us, we've really, at the moment, decided to stick with our model of like our personal capital, and then we bring in private lenders who they invest through their self-directed IRA. They might just have other liquid capital. We use all of the above. We use life insurance policies. We get loans from those to lend. We use HELOCs. We've sold properties to roll more capital in, and then of course, as much self-directed IRA money of ours as we can throw at it. For us, it's just one of the best investment opportunities we can find with the security and the returns and the predictable cash flow versus, investing in the market. If the market dips and you're in retirement and you're trying to make distributions, you could lock in losses that could hurt your overall returns for years by having to take the distribution when the market goes down
yeah,
versus the
yeah.
loans every time they pay off for cash flow. And that's what a lot of our investors do.
And then, I don't think I asked, but you said that sometimes, a lot of times they take extensions, but what are the typical periods of the loans, let's say for an invest away? Like, what's the set time period? Just so maybe if you were to explain for the sake of our community, right? A lot of people, obviously, everyone who watches this show already has a self-directed IRA with us here at Rocket Dollar, but for all intents and purposes, probably has not actually done a private lending deal. So what, timeline expectations, we talked about the interest rate expectations, but how long are the loans set
Yeah,
for?
so
Maybe
most of
they
our
like
loans
6 months or
are
10
4 to
months
9
or
months. Yeah, so our default is 4 to 9 months, and that is something that we offer as kind of a customizable option for our borrowers. So if they go for the longer term, that's going to boost the interest rate a little bit. So the longer the term, the higher the interest rate. The nice thing about our model is because we have the loans on the portal, they are there until they're either fully allocated or it's getting close to being paid off. And so if an investor just wants to park capital for a few months, not an entire 9 month loan, they can pick a loan that's got a maturity date that's maturing, when they want their capital back. Now, it's not guaranteed because they do have extensions, but they can be pretty sure that like within plus or minus a few months, it's going to be paid back at that time.
I see. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And then, one of the other things I saw that your team had sent over to us too is that you actually have a kind of a book as well that kind of talks about the private lending. Like, I don't know if that's something that's widely available or something you wanted to, kind of share the URL to so people can like, maybe give you their information to kind of get access to that document. But I thought it was pretty
Yeah,
neat
thanks
when I
for
was looking
bringing
through it
that up.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah, people
Do
go to
you?
investaway.co and they just scroll down a little bit. There's a link they can fill out, and we've got the guide. It's the 7 common mistakes that private lenders make and how not to.
And how not to. Well, I mean, sounds like um, I can definitely see how people would probably try to get into one of these deals themselves because if you're just doing it yourself directly, you're most likely getting introduced directly, or you might know this person, and then unbeknownst to you, find out after the fact that you're in a second position on that loan, right? And all you really heard was, I know the person and they're offering me 15% or something like that. So you kind of take that deal and then you realize that there's a primary loan against the property already, and now you're in a second position. So that could be pretty dangerous, for sure. And one of the things that I have talked about, and this is kind of interesting because I think that what you do, the private lending using IRA monies, is going to get bigger and bigger. Because I'm giving a presentation this weekend at a real estate investor conference, and so I'm kind of preparing my slides and my research for that. But the latest data show that there's about $19.8 trillion now sitting in IRA accounts. So that's just the IRAs. The overall retirement accounts, which include the 401ks that you transit over, is about 46.8. So, I mean, I got to think that, yes, that's a lot of money that could be available to keep going into the stock market. But the reality is that there's 46.8 trillion in these retirement accounts. It's actually already in those types of investments. And if it goes anywhere else, it's going to go to something private. It's not just going to get spent. Americans aren't going to spend down $10 trillion of IRA money in the next 5 years. They're going to continue to contribute, and then there will be people who obviously phase into retirement and will be spending that money. But I got to think that, maybe the way you look at this environment, there's a chance for you to really scale the particular business and the number of deals that you do, the amount of dollars.
Yeah, we're very excited about the opportunities. Almost everyone I speak to, when I share that they could do this with a self-directed IRA, their eyes light up and they're like, "Oh my goodness, how can we do this?" I share the link to Rocket Dollar, and it's just great because when people look at the returns you can make with the self-directed IRA through private lending, it takes a lot less capital to get to maybe a monthly cash flow amount to be able to walk away from a W-2 job than people are used to in like traditional stock markets from financial advisors to say, follow the 4% rule or things like that, where you need just like millions and millions and millions of dollars for retirement to like have a comfortable life and walk away from a W-2. When you're making
Yeah.
15% secured by real estate, that number goes way down. You can be very comfortable with a lot less capital deployed in your retirement.
I see. And then, you're still backed by the real estate as well. And then, finding platforms like yours at Investaway allows you to have some sort of structure. Like, you're still investing in real estate, but you're not the one having to go evaluate that deal because, I mean, I think to my own limitations, every now and then I'll hit up a real estate networking group, but I think to myself, it's very concentrated, right? It's a group of people in Austin. So is this necessarily the place that, I want to be funding fix and flips, for example, right? In a somewhat what's become a pretty expensive market. I want to maybe expand horizons, but how would I go know to find a deal in the southeastern
Yeah.
United States and so forth? But right now, what's the registration process on the site? Like you can kind of register, and that's how you get access to the portal. Is that how people sign up?
Yeah, so people just reach out. We have a contact form on our website that'll go straight to me. We'll schedule a quick call to have a conversation, make sure I understand the investing goals. And then from there, I send them a registration link to view our portal. And then it's as easy as just selecting the deal in the portal and saying how much you want to invest. We send the co-lending agreement to e-sign, and which includes wiring instructions. You pass that to Rocket Dollar, and they wire the funds to us, and then you're active invested in that loan. And then when it gets paid off, we send it back to Rocket Dollar, and you can go for the next one.
Yeah, and you said minimum $50,000 right now. Just that probably keeps things a little bit easier on your side. Well,
Yep.
sort of here at the end, I mean, you're someone who's seen a lot. Maybe you can just give us opinions. I mean, obviously you're regionally specialized in the southeastern United States, but just I guess maybe tell us a little bit about thoughts on real estate investing in general and just how that market will continue to play out. Maybe as a ballast against like, the stock market is somewhat concentrated, maybe at or near a top. I guess it always kind of sits at a top with declines here and there. But you just mentioned that if you're going into retirement now and you need to liquidate those funds, you could be selling at a 30% loss because there's 10, 20, and 30% declines on an annual basis every 10 years in the market. There's a 10% loss year, there's a 20% loss year, and a 30% loss year every decade. And if you just happen to need to retire in one of those years, that could be detrimental to your portfolio and so forth.
Yeah, so real estate investing, I am still very bullish on it. I think that there's a lot of opportunity, especially at the entry-level homes. We have a housing affordability issue in the US where developers are no longer building starter homes. They're just not profitable for them. And the way
Mm.
starter homes come back on the market and the housing affordability crisis is helped to be addressed is through private lenders, because we're the ones who are providing the capital to the real estate investors who are taking these homes that are otherwise unlivable, rehabilitating them and putting them back in the market for these first-time home buyers, entry-level home buyers. And so not only are we like having solid returns and a secure investment, we're also doing well for these communities. We're doing good for the communities by helping address housing supply issues.
Yeah. Well, maybe here at the end, like southeastern United States, like I mean, can you give like a little bit of a quick overview of maybe like just one particular market that you work in right now? Just so we get a sense and
Yeah,
understand. I
so
mean, this is one where they're not building a bunch of new homes, right? It's the homes that are already there, but a new person can't just come in and spend $50,000 to renovate a property, much less buy it. That's where you come in.
right, so exactly. We partnered, a story I love sharing is this young gentleman who was in his early 20s. I met him at a real estate investor meetup in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He had a lot of credit issues. He had gotten into trouble with credit cards in college, had racked up a lot of debt there, had a bad credit score. And so he was actually locked out from getting financing from traditional hard money lenders and certainly banks and traditional financing to be able to do real estate investing. But he
Okay.
was so confident in real estate investing. He had experience, working for a contractor. He was handy and he had some connections with people to be able to get deals. He had knew a lot of wholesalers in the area that had deal flow. And so I talked to him and I said, look, we underwrite on the deal. We don't care what your credit is. As long as like we have the margin in the property itself, that's securing our investment, we can work with you. And so he was one of our early borrowers and he did several deals with us over 2 years. He got all of his debt paid off. He flipped half the properties. So he turned them into like entry-level homes for new buyers. And then he kept half. He did the BRRRR strategy where he refinanced them and got renters in them. And some of them he did like seller financing where he refinanced it and then did like a subject to sale where he still is owning it, but they're making payments to him and he doesn't have to do any of the maintenance. And he got all of his debt cleared off and started making six figures of net profit from the flipping. And he was the first person in his entire family to ever make that much money. And he did it because we partnered with him and gave him the capital he needed to change his life.
Wow, that's an amazing story for sure. I mean, and then obviously great for anyone who invested in them too, because they're clipping these, 14, 15, 16% returns, while watching someone literally create generational wealth and probably put
Yeah, it's a
themselves in a
win-win-win
position to
for
travel like
everyone.
you. Well, and
Yeah.
you mentioned as well, like the community benefits too, because now there's a handful of homes that become available for someone to be able to live in and raise a family, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's one of the unique things that I like about self-directed IRAs that investing in the stock market become a little bit intangible, right? I mean, you're gonna, I guess in a way we referenced this earlier, but in a couple weeks when SpaceX IPOs, it's essentially regular Americans giving cash now to the super rich private equity and venture capital and Elon Musk's friends who probably knew how to invest in this company 15 years ago, and so
Yeah,
forth. So it's
exactly.
finally turning their paper money into real money, but the real money is actually being provided by average American people and buying it through their index funds and maybe directly if they choose to buy it at the IPO and so forth. And that's the
That's exactly
liquidity
right. Do you want your
event.
retirement basically buying Elon Musk another yacht, or do you want to help your, local community, have nice homes for people to live in?
Yeah. Well, I thought about that and I had that conversation just last night with a friend of mine. I said that ironically enough, if you think about it, there's going to be millions of regular American, hardworking Americans who are literally going to give cash over to the wealthiest person in the world at a $776 billion current net worth today. As you know, it doesn't need the
And the
cash.
fact is that cash could go to zero. It is a stock that business could theoretically go to zero versus with private lending, it's secured against real estate that, there would be major issues if real estate went to zero.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also pretty safe to say that either probably within the first month or two, it's either going to go up 20 to 50% or it's going to go down 20 to 50%. I mean, I don't think anyone thinks it's going to stay at that exact IPO price. It's kind of a coin toss on it, it's going to be big up or big down in those first 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 days or so forth, and especially 6 months. But, that's a whole different episode altogether. But in the meantime, maybe for folks that, have accumulated those 401k monies are now looking at a self-directed IRA account, but don't necessarily either have entirely enough to go buy a property on their own or just choose not to do so. They can go to that Investaway platform, scroll down, get your guide, look at some of the deals. Obviously, work with us. We'll publish in the show notes. We have a promo code for anyone that comes through the Investaway community to us that will give them a pretty significant chunk off of the sign up of the account. But, in the meantime, Harley, let us share this episode, share that story. I mean, I kind of love that. You're very much like our typical Rocket Dollar customer. You've just done what I think a lot of them want to do, which is I spent 15 years working in this corporate job, and now I have the ability, currently chiming in from Lima, Peru, to travel with your family. I mean, to say that your kids have been to 20 countries, I think I saw something on Instagram that if you've traveled to one foreign country, that puts you in an elite position worldwide. So your children are ultra elite right now because of the experiences that you and your wife Adrian are giving them. So, uh,
Absolutely. I'm very
yeah.
blessed.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I'd encourage people, go to the investaway.co, look at deals, learn about it. As I mentioned, private lending using your self-directed IRA dollars is probably the fastest growing use case among our customer base over the last 12 to 15 months. And it's private lending for sure. And it's because of people like you making it easy for folks. Otherwise, it's maybe going and finding a one-off deal, which is probably going to be tied just to your geography, which, depending on where you live, may or may not be the best route to go. Yeah, well, thank you very much. I don't want to keep you any longer, but thank you very much for joining us, Harley, and
It's
getting
been
your
a
guide.
pleasure, Henry. Thanks for having me on.